Can you just play that clip one more time?
Everybody's going to be able to own a Bitcoin. You need to understand that the more the US dollar gets printed, the more the currency gets devalued, the more Bitcoin is going to go up. There's a limited supply versus infinite supply. So once we hit supply shock and not everybody is able to get their hands on, that's when people are going to start running to the doors to get some. So get in early. The people that call it a scam, they're usually financially illiterate.
The headline there is that Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation as the US dollar inflation increases and more money is printed. Then the logic is basically that you're going to have the price of Bitcoin go up as more and more people rush in to buy it as a hedge against inflation on the US dollar.
Yeah, Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation is a nice narrative.
Yes.
It sounds nice. People can intuit, like they can make the logical connections, and they're like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And that's not actually how it's playing out.
No.
I saw this chart just this week that mapped the price of Bitcoin to a 3 times levered QQQ, or the NASDAQ ETF.
Okay.
And they were like mirror image.
Yeah.
And would anyone say that the tech stocks are an inflation hedge?
Definitely not. Definitely
no,
not.
But what is it? It is a liquidity. It's all about liquidity, how much dollars are in the system. And as there's more liquidity, there's more money to be buying and speculating.
Yeah.
And right now, Bitcoin how should I say it? Bitcoin is acting like a big tech stock company. That's what it is right now.
Yep.
And I don't think anyone should mistake it for being anything else.
Yeah.
You go on Twitter, you go on YouTube, the influencers are all wanting you to say, like, if you don't buy Bitcoin now, it's going to go straight to $1 million. You're going to get left behind.
Right.
That is not, we're not there.
Yeah.
We are nowhere near enough adoption for that to be the case.
And it takes time. You know, like even the tech stocks, you have penny stocks, right, that go up and down. This is like people playing altcoins.
Yeah.
And just throwing money at like a Pepe or whatever, like the meme coin is of the week. And those, you see these rapid movements. But part of that, I think, to your point, is the volume and the liquidity, and is like, you know, Bitcoin is never going to have 1,000% increase in a 24-hour period again.
Yeah.
Like that's just not, the numbers are too large for that to happen.
Right.
And so I think if you treat it like something that, you know, one day I'm just going to miss it, you're wrong. I think it's more like Tesla's stock, where it's gone up, it's gone up, it's gone up, it's gone up. And it's like, oh, 5 years ago, I really should have bought this. Now I'm wishing I had.
That's it.
You know, it's exactly like a tech stock.
The other thing to think about is, like, people have been preaching gold as being an inflation hedge. Well, what has gold done over the last 3-4 years? Really hasn't done much.
Yeah.
So what is gold? We like these narratives. They make sense. Gold is scarce. It should be, you know, this inflation hedge.
It's comforting.
It's comforting. Don't get sucked into the narratives. As soon as a narrative is commonly believed, that's when you know you should get out.
Yeah. A follow-up to that may be a narrative that I've heard a lot is that during, and this is related to the inflation, that during COVID, the US government printed a ton of money, gave people a ton of money, gave businesses and business owners a ton of money. And a lot of it did not have to be paid back immediately or at all in some cases. A lot of people think that the boom of 2021 was driven by this excess and, you know, free money essentially that I didn't have before. There is, I think, a little bit more proof for that narrative.
Totally.
Do you buy that narrative?
I buy that narrative.
Yes.
Because that's, again, liquidity.
Right.
Money in the system. People you give people money that they didn't have the day before, they can go speculate on it. They're going to go to the speculative assets.
So if we really want to see Bitcoin run, we print all the monies, put all of it into crypto. The US dollar is just going to fall off the rails, and Bitcoin then will
yeah,
really
that's interesting. Like, is a vote in Bitcoin a vote against the dollar? And are you like rooting, is rooting for Bitcoin to go up, rooting for the dollar to go down?
Yeah.
or not even the dollar, but
Right.
like the U.S.
The
as an
monetary systems
institution
as we
to-
know them. Yeah.
to fail and collapse.
Right.
I think there's some truth to it.
Yeah.
But I think we're a long ways away from the dollar risking being replaced.
Well, and as flawed as fiat currency in these systems are, the failure or collapse of any of the major ones would be catastrophic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if you are pro crypto and you're pro blockchain, trying to say that, okay, we're going to go all in on this and we're going to get rid of the old way, it breaks a lot of things.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And would cause catastrophic downturn, depression like scenarios, I think, globally.
Yeah. Which I feel like leads to the question of like, when are we going to see $1 million Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I talked to a hedge fund manager yesterday and he's like, we see $1 million Bitcoin by 2030, right? And I was like, I could see it. I can also see it maybe just getting to 500,000. But the difference between $500,000 and $1 million kind of seems like the same thing almost. Either way, it's like a 10x or a 20x. In 2030, we're going to see that type of increase.
But he was bullish on this.
He was bullish on this. And and I think that can be the case without the dollar being collapsing.
Yeah.
You could have both.
What other questions did you have for him about? Maybe just back up, tell us, without names potentially, who was this person? What does he do? He runs a hedge fund, it sounds like, that's all crypto.
Yeah. So my friend, he has been running this crypto hedge fund for, I think 3 years now. He has around $40 million in assets under management. They started with 5. They've grown it to 40.
Wow.
They've done it really well.
3 years.
Yeah. He was telling me how he lost. He's like, we have 40. Well, I guess after yesterday, we have 35. Like, right? Like it was down 12%. 12% of 40 is $5 million. So
stressful job.
And so we went back and forth kind of like, what are we seeing and what are we predicting? And I was like, I want to sell at 80, 85K because I know I can buy it back around 40. And he's like, oh, 40. I don't think we go below 60. I was like, oh, 60? Wow. Like we're at 60.
Yeah.
And basically the conversation led that he thinks the top is closer to 120 to 150, which if that's the case, I could see the bottom being 60. I'm saying the top's closer to 80, 90, 95. And he was like, yeah, if that's the top, then I could see 40.
Yeah.
So we have similar expectations of a drop after a top.
Right.
The question is, where is the top?
Yeah.
Which then proceeded into, we both see how Bitcoin is like a tech stock, correlated to the markets. The question then becomes, if we look at traditional markets, are we at the beginning of a bull market that started after the 2022 bear market? Or are we at the end of a bull market that started in 2019? And my vote is that we're at the end, and his vote is we're closer to the beginning.
Makes it really tough to time the markets in that case.
Totally. And that's exactly what we talked about. Is like, that is why it's important to just have rules.
Right.
You have rules in place so that whatever happens, you don't allow your emotions to get the better of you. I've been listening to lots of financial experts. And the thing that I keep picking up on more recently than I ever have before is it's not about being right and about making the most money. It's about risk management. And amateur investors and traders, myself included, do not have the proper risk management that is required to stay rich. You can get rich by being like playing it haphazardly, betting it all, but you will not stay rich.
Right. It's just bingo at that point.
It's bingo. And I'm proof of it. I have made millions multiple times. I've also lost because I didn't have risk management. And that is what I am determined to do this time.
From your conversation with a crypto hedge fund manager, what would be, 2 or 3 takeaways that like an average person, investor, individual could learn about, managing their investments or managing their portfolio, similar to, an institutional kind of trader?
Well, I would say the one thing that puts them above the rest in terms of any amateur is how well they understand it.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that they put in years of practice
Mm-hmm.
before starting this. And it's something that they're doing day in and day out every day for hours on end. It's kind of prideful, I guess, to think that you can just kind of walk in and pull the same kind of results
Mm-hmm.
and just do it on the side, maybe a half hour, an hour a day. So that's one of like, you're playing against experts.
Right.
And because they fundamentally know it, they don't get shaken by the volatility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like last week, Bitcoin was down 25%
Mm-hmm.
in 4 days. If you don't know exactly what you're dealing with, you're going to get shaken out.
Yeah.
My wife asked, like, so is he bullish? And I was like, well, he told me that in his personal account, he took out $1 million loan to buy more Ethereum. That's the kind of bullishness that it takes to be able to buy after it's down 25% in 4 days.
Yeah.
And you can't do that unless you really fundamentally understand what you're dealing with.
And have connections with millions of dollars they can loan you.
Yes.
That helps.
Yeah. And so I would say the third thing is, and this is tough. And he told me, he's like, I have done a lot of work to shift my mentality around meme coins. He's like, I was vehemently opposed to them. I had a moral problem with them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, now I think that there's a place for them. And he's like, okay, we have a $40 million fund. I'm going to take $500,000. Like, what's that percentage? It's like 0.5%, 1% maybe.
Yeah.
And if we lose it, that's fine. It's not going to be the end of the day. But if we do catch one that does 100x, 200x, like that can have a meaningful difference.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that's kind of how I approach people that have zero Bitcoin of like, let's just start with 1%.
Right.
Bitcoin can be the traditional person's meme coin, but then somebody that's all in crypto, what's their meme? Well, they play in the meme coins.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because investors, I've often heard them use the term asymmetrical upside, and that's really what you're looking for.
That's what you're
right?
looking for.
Like if you have a portfolio of stocks and bonds, investing in crypto at all is your asymmetrical upside, right? You put 1% in it, there's a good chance you could see 40, 50% returns on something like Ethereum or Bitcoin in a bull market.
Yeah.
Same thing with if you have a bunch of crypto, that's the point you're making is that, okay, a meme coin, you could see 200, 1200% increase in a couple of months, potentially.
So when he was telling me that, like, I don't want to play in meme coins. I'm not interested, but I might give them money to play in meme coins on my behalf. That I'm interested in that.
Did he offer any guidance or suggestions, because meme coins are just playing the lottery, right? Did he give you any, like, this is how we think about, because that would be really interesting to me is like, how does a hedge fund manager of a crypto fund choose a meme coin to invest in?
Yeah, I think it's mostly the network he's curated of the, who he follows on Twitter, what channels he's on in Reddit. And he's not going to tell me where he gets his secret sauce, because that's basically where all the money's made. But yeah, he's curated. It's not you can't spot it. You're not like, this is the metric.
Right.
It's more of like getting the pulse of social media and feeling like, oh, this one's getting momentum.
So he's looking for signals just like anyone else would be on the internet. So he didn't give you a hot tip on the next meme coin?
The only one he mentioned was WIF. WIF.
What is WIF?
I have no idea. I've just seen it on Twitter.
We have dog WIF hat. Maybe it's
Yeah,
Whiff.
I've seen dog whiff hat.
That might be it.
Is that whiff?
Maybe
is
that's
the
it. I don't
token
know.
whiff?
Oh wait, maybe it is whiff.
Look,
Let me look.
look real
I'll
quick.
look right now. Let's see.
That's funny because we were just talking about whiff last week.
Dog
the
whiff hat.
the biggest problem I have with meme coins is I just don't want to go on another exchange.
So there's whiff, and there's dog whiff hat, and I think they're like sister coins. I don't know how that works.
It's like, aren't there like 7 Trump coins and like 3 different Pepe coins now?
Yeah, there are. There's a ton of Pepe coins. You never know which one you're buying, especially because like they even change the avatar for the coin so often that you don't know if you're getting the original one.
So every time I think about, oh, that would be cool to go get whiff, and then I was like, okay, well then I got to transfer money from this exchange to this exchange, and every time I do that, then I got to think about the tax implications of trying to figure out and piece all those transactions together.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm like, that's not worth it for me.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not even sure how one would invest in some of these on a regular basis without having 12 different exchange accounts.
The other thing is on meme coins, you have to be paying attention like all the time.
Right.
And have access to be able to go in and sell because you never have an idea of like when it's going to pump. And I just don't like looking at the charts all the time.
Yeah.
I would imagine that with meme coins, there's a lot of like social cues, right? Like social media cues as to when one of them's going to pump, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where they're all gaining their popularity.
Yeah. You're up against these, I would call them basement dwellers that are just in their basement, probably in their pajamas, just scouring social media, the charts, and like that's all they're doing all day, every day. If you have a life, don't try it.
It's the same thing that happened to Roaring Kitty.
Roaring Kitty,
It's
exactly.
the GameStop one against the 1%.
Yeah.
Great movie,
Diamond
by the way.
Hands tendies. That's who you're up against.
That's a great movie.
It's
It
a
is
great movie.
If you haven't seen it, like that is what you're up against.
Yeah.
Times there's thousands of these guys.
Yeah. Probably millions.
Millions. All around the world. That's kind of cool thing is like, you don't have to be an American to benefit and get wildly rich off a meme coin.
I love that.
Whiff.
Something that I thought was interesting as we were talking through here. One sec. Meme coin background. Is in the eventuality of a $1 million Bitcoin. I think, can we speculate on what the world might look like in the case of that situation?
Sure.
And Jared, maybe you can, I guess, establish this question better than I can.
So let's say the year's 2030.
Okay.
Bitcoin has climbed slowly but surely to over $1 million. What ramifications or impact would that have globally on nations, other currencies, and just our financial system at large?
Basically, what does the world look like with $1 million Bitcoin?
Yep.
For one, there's going to be I'm guessing there's at least more than one country that is like, we have Bitcoin in our treasury. I mean, we have El Salvador. So it's going to be more common, and there's going to be more countries that do that, that are basically saying, we need an insurance policy. It's that's $1 million basically says there's consensus that our current financial system is not sustainable and we need a backup plan. That's what $1 million Bitcoin signals to the rest of the world. And you're going to have institutions that have bought a lot. And it's just going to be everybody seeing it as this insurance policy.
In terms of the US dollar being the world currency, what implication does that have?
Yeah, so the US dollar as the world currency, you have also, the BRICS countries and their concept of a currency. I don't see. I still think that U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency. It's not getting dethroned at $1,000,000, but it's getting people to start seeing that it's a possibility that the U.S. dollar isn't forever.
Mhm.
I think right now the U.S. dollar kind of collapsing is a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
People can like see how that happens, but it doesn't seem the here and now. I mean, one thing, you're going to have Michael Saylor as the richest person on the planet.
Mhm.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm trying to visualize like,
Does it have to be bad? Let me ask it this way. Do you think that $1 million Bitcoin would cause the collapse of any nations or other financial systems around the world? Do you think that it would wreak any havoc on countries or currencies throughout the world?
I don't think there's any havoc happening with $1 million Bitcoin.
Mhm.
But what I think is like on the groundswell of like you think of any type of company that's trying to disrupt another, they go with like the low cost
Mhm.
solution. I think of like TVs, or I don't know exactly the best example. Kind of like Kia
Mhm.
or Hyundai provides a cheaper cost vehicle, and they slowly then work their way up to then take on the higher end
Right.
brands. And I feel like that's what $1 million Bitcoin is starting to enable these smaller countries that don't have any
Mhm.
power, and they're just
Yeah.
relying on and kind of whipsawed by whatever the US does and whatever policies they decide.
Right.
This $1 million Bitcoin starts to give them autonomy
Mhm.
and a light at the end of the tunnel of political and financial freedom from the US.
You think countries like El Salvador or Greece or some of these other countries that have had these issues with their own financial system, do you think that they would just immediately switch over? I know some of them have said like, "Hey, we're going to make this our currency," but no one has really made it a day-to-day embraced currency of a nation.
Yeah, I totally see at least one country, probably closer to 5, that
Yeah.
are like, Bitcoin is what we are standardizing on.
And do you think that that would be sort of a stepping stone to a global transition to crypto within the century?
Yes. Yeah, it has to start somewhere, and it's going to start with the countries that have the most volatility with their currency,
Right.
or the most reliant on the US, and they're just tired of being controlled.
Mhm.
But again, I do think this is like we are trying to like change hundreds of years of habits in
Right.
terms of fiat currency. So I think it takes another 20 to 25 years before it even is remotely considered to be a global currency.
Even though we talk about, currencies being unstable relative to crypto, the leading world powers currencies are very stable. You know what I mean? Like if you
Yeah.
look at the stability of the US dollar versus even Bitcoin, it's
Yeah.
not close.
Not even close.
So for these countries where they don't have that stability, this becomes a good alternative as it becomes more and more stable and steadily grows over time. But I think, for those bigger countries, it doesn't even make sense for a very long time
Right.
because of the stability they've established.
Yeah. I should add, I think so right now the US is at how many trillions of debt? Like 36 trillion?
36, 37.
So at $1 million Bitcoin, I see that we're at like $75 trillion of debt. So double where we're at. And that's also, I mean, and I think that amount of debt is what is going to be the signal that people are like, this is unsustainable.
Mhm.
And they're looking for, again, that insurance policy.
Yeah. Countries like Germany, though, where they've had healthier financial practices and kept debt much more reasonable, they'd have no reason to switch over to something like that.
Well, I feel like they still would because their economy is so tied directly to the US.
I gotcha.
Their currency, there's just too much connection that what happens to the dollar is going to affect everybody else.
Cool. Can we maybe jump into the...
Do you want to do the JP Morgan one?
Yeah, that one's a little more controversial.
That'll be short.
Yeah, it'll be short.
It'll be short.
Did you understand the connection I was trying to make there compared to our content from last week?
What do you mean?
So Jamie Dimon says that Bitcoin will fall down to, what did he say? 42K after the halving. But then a while back, you have this, I guess they're blaming or they're accusing JP Morgan of
Taking
market manipulation.
Manipulating the stock.
Yeah.
Do I think that Jamie Dimon is manipulating the price of Bitcoin so that he can buy more? Absolutely. He did it in 2017. He's doing it again. He did it like last year, a couple months ago. Like I remember where I was, like the day when he did the press conference in September of 2017, and he called Bitcoin the biggest scam. And he caused the price to go from, I want to say it's $3,500 down to like $1,900. And it was scary. And I'm like, the Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan is calling Bitcoin a scam. I'm like, is Bitcoin actually a scam? Like, is this it? Is this the end? And that triggered the bottom. And then it was a race to 19,000, from 1,900 to 19,000 basically in less than 3 months. I guarantee you, I think it's come out that JP Morgan bought some then, and he just knows that it works. And there's nothing that anybody's going to do about it because the regulators and Elizabeth Warren, they don't like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And they get paid by JP Morgan. So if it's, I'm sure it's not their number one moneymaker, but if he's going to be able to play the game, he's going to like, yeah, why not do that? And it's not, I don't think there's any point to cry about it. It's like, it is what it is. When he does that, it's a gift to you. You can also go and buy it.
Yeah, it's like you almost just want to watch anytime he talks.
Thanks,
let's
Jamie.
See. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Let me get out my wallet. I think that he gets blamed for a lot of stuff that isn't his fault. And I've seen his quotes and I've seen his stuff, and most of the stuff that he says gets taken out of context and spread all over Twitter and spread all over every blockchain outlet in the world. Most of the interviews of him talking about Bitcoin, he's very reasonable. And he doesn't say, there's things where he'll say, this is not going to displace our current financial system. And then the headlines will be, Jamie Dimon thinks Bitcoin's a fraud and a scam. And that, while would he do that potentially to make more money and help his company? For sure he would. And I think maybe he has. But the scale of JP Morgan is so large that he's not the one buying Bitcoin. He's not logging into Coinbase and buying Bitcoin.
No.
So I think to say okay, Jamie Dimon's tanking it and then he's going to go home and buy a bunch of Bitcoin. I think that's ludicrous. And I think that most of the statements he makes about crypto in general are not that far-fetched, especially for someone with a finance background, who's deeply entrenched, maybe more so than anyone else in the US financial system. And so I think it's all blown a little bit out of proportion. A company with, I don't know how many employees they have, probably hundreds of thousands of employees, to say that he does X and then Y happens, I just don't think is super realistic given, if you're an executive at a company that large, in any given day, you have all meetings and nothing else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think he's texting someone, go buy the Bitcoin now, I'm going to make the thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's in any of their quarterly goals.
No.
I think that he gives his honest opinion about it, which gets blown out of proportion, which causes the price to tank. And he has people whose job it is to take advantage of opportunities like this.
Really well said. In addition, I do think JP Morgan has the most to lose. One of the entities that has the most to lose to Bitcoin succeeding.
That's a good point.
At the same time, I don't think Jamie Dimon will be in charge when or if that ever happens. We're still years away.
Yeah.
And he's not young.
But if it were to happen next year, would he be out at JP Morgan? Maybe. You know what I mean? Like, if he was against it the whole time, and then BlackRock and some of these other companies who embraced it.
That's a good question. Like, you got to think that Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink of BlackRock are buddies.
Probably know each other. Probably play golf.
I would be surprised if they did it. And Larry Fink's all in now on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You got to think that Jamie Dimon is like not ignorant to that.
The interviews I've seen, it seems like he's very well versed.
Well, he has to be.
You know, and he has said things that make it seem like, okay, he hates this. He thinks the whole thing's a scam. But he's also said very reasonable things.
Yeah.
You know, that reflect kind of his position and his experience in the financial system. So
we don't need to hate on Jamie Dimon. Keep our hate to
Seems very reasonable to me.
Senator Warren and Gensler.
There you go.
We'll just leave it there.
Yeah. That's someone we can all, and now Craig Wright.
Yeah.
For pretending to be Satoshi.
Cool. I think the only other thing that I'd want to hit on is let's speculate on what the last mined Bitcoin looks like.
You want to do the CIA one?
Oh, yeah.
I forgot what I read, actually.
You forgot?
I read some too.
Oh, yeah. I remember it. Yeah. Sit up for this.
Get ready for this
one. Crypto pundits, influencers, conspiracy theorists, doomsday preppers have all suggested that, you know, a government agency like the CIA could be responsible for creating Bitcoin. Do you buy or sell that hot take?
I'm going to sell that. It would give, to me, that gives our government a lot of credit.
That's a good point.
But at the same time, I think it's common knowledge that the military has advanced technologies. And that's where I think a lot of the speculation comes from, is like the CIA has access to technologies, information that the common person doesn't have. It would not be too far-fetched to think that they, you know, either funded or had some involvement, knew the people that were involved in creating it. The speculation goes to that there were people that were early on in Bitcoin having conversations, documented conversations with the CIA. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they know who it is, but I do not think it was funded by them or that they had any direct involvement.
I agree with you. Two interesting theories kind of in this vein. One of them is that, okay, let's say the CIA did do it. Why would they do it?
Okay.
What would be the goal or intent behind it? So one of the stories that I've come across is, well, they also have kind of enforced these KYC regulations. So if you have a network where anyone can go in and create these wallets, and then you enforce these KYC things, you can go look up anybody.
Yeah.
Right. The whole world is doxxed, or anyone that's using crypto, essentially.
Yeah.
Because you can see their face, no one can transact in it. And if that eventually becomes a world currency, you sort of have this database of everyone throughout the world, not just in your own country.
Yeah. The motivation would definitely be around being able to track transactions.
Yes.
There are other ways to do that.
Sure.
That are easier to track than using a blockchain.
Yes. Well, and we talked about JP Morgan, you know, and to think that the government can't just go kind of look up anyone's information, you know, I'd be surprised if that weren't the case.
Yeah. The other thing would be like just to like get ahead of any financial upheaval that they would kind of be the ones leading the charge. But if you look at any amount of like disruption, technology disruption, Rarely does that come from within the leader, like the leading company.
Right.
It comes from somebody that is incentivized. They're not incentivized to like Kodak is a great example.
Right.
They did not come up with digital cameras. I mean, I
Mhm.
think they invented it. I think they were involved in that discovery,
Mhm.
but they didn't lead the investment that changed the industry.
Right.
So I think the CIA had some awareness of it, but they did not drive it.
Yeah, I agree. Rarely does the leading innovation come from within government, you know.
That's also
And
true.
then people, would say that, well, that's intentional. They don't want you to know what they do. And they have all these secret things, which both I think are true. Two sort of counterpoints to what you just said is one, when you look at the foundations of the internet, and a lot of that did come from military, DARPA, other type of projects. A lot of that technology did. There's also a really kind of fascinating thread about the government creating Facebook. So there's this. I don't remember if it's DARPA or what agency it's tied to, but there's a project that was, and this is, as far as I can tell, true. I'm not an investigative journalist, but there's a project about something that sort of vaguely describes what Facebook is, like a community social fabric on the internet type project that shut down the same day that Facebook launched in like 2004 or something like that.
And Zuckerberg's just the face. He's the plant.
supposedly. And people have done, apparently he has these connections to like, the Illuminati of sort of the US government. And so they say that, well, there's no way he could have invented this. They just gave it to him and made him the face and like, whatever. So I don't buy any of that, but there's kind of some fascinating threads there that have some truth to them about a project that was shut down at the same time Facebook launched. And if you think about the timeline of Bitcoin, it would almost accomplish a lot of those same goals just a few years later.
Yeah.
Just 3 or 4 years later.
In that same vein, the other conspiracy is that the creators of Bitcoin basically are time travelers. And they're from the year 2050, and they're like, we needed this. And so they came back to 2008
Nice.
and gave that to us. So I think that's as
like
believable as the other one.
Yeah, maybe more so, actually.